Hey guys, so here's a conversation between CJ from the Milestones. Beat My Mix 8 tracks are available for download in the description. Your mixes are due June 9th. There will be a prize given out, so submit your mix by June 9th. I will announce the winner on June 16th. We reacted to mixes from Beat My Mix 7, and he talks about how he went from a beginner with really no knowledge of recording to now owning a cabin recording studio in Stanton, Virginia. Check it out. I'm here with CJ Metz from the Milestones and the owner of Sill and Glade Cabin for the Beat My Mix 7-song UFO. This is the band. He's in the band, and we're going to listen to some of your mixes. But first, I just wanted to talk to CJ a little bit just about his cabin where he records bands. And so how you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the
Sure.
episode on the channel. And yeah, you know that I tune in and watch and get a lot of information. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing your experience and wisdom and just being you on here. So thanks for
Thanks,
having me
man.
on this.
So we met back in like 2016, I think. You guys
Sounds
played.
about right.
Yeah, and then I recorded you guys in the basement at my old studio.
Which we still think that those are some of our favorite recordings that we've really had of our band.
Yeah, they were like I was very proud of those recordings, and you guys you basically recorded live in my basement, and then we overdubbed stuff. But back when you guys did that, did you have an interface or did you record music at all back then?
No, at that point, Alex, the other singer and guitar player and songwriter of the band, had been pressuring me to get into recording and saying it's like super easy and that I had my head in the sand about it and that we could be a lot more efficient and productive as a band if I did that. But I kind of thought there was this barrier to entry where like you had to know all the ins and outs of all things audio and electrical engineering and instrument.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just like I thought that not anybody could enter that world. Um and it was when Alex and my wife, I guess, got me a Scarlett 2i2, I believe, and like AKG large condenser for like $100.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing, but YouTube was there and really, I think just the nature of experimentation and not knowing what I was doing kind of allowed me to figure a lot of stuff out on my own. And the problem is that I then wasn't sure if what I was doing was quote unquote correct by the books or what have you.
Yeah.
But it was a ton of fun. And then I mean I was using an old MacBook with GarageBand at first, and then years later I ended up downloading Logic just to have more options and yeah, really just more options. Um, and then yeah, since then, I mean, fast forward what, I don't know, maybe at this point it might have been 2018. So fast
Yeah.
forward about 5 years or so, and my wife and I moved to a cabin in rural Virginia, and we've got a big room and enough gear to make some good recordings.
We record full bands now.
Yep, yep. Thanks to you too. So
Yeah.
that's another piece of the story that I think is pretty vital. That when you came to record our band at the cabin for a week of was supposed to
Yeah.
be a week, which ended up being a couple of days, but our three of the four members of the band and our drummer John, Alex, and then myself on guitar and vocals, and then you jumped in and played some bass with us and
Yeah.
um, kind of oversaw and helped produce some of the recordings that came out of that. That I think you quickly pointed out this room sounds good,
Yeah.
and
It does.
that the it's more than the room; it's kind of the ambience of the property and the geography of just getting away from the hustle of daily life. And yeah, there's something special here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Let's rewind a little bit. Like, so 2018, I got a phone call. I was working as like a golf pro at a country club, and you were like, "We're going to Blackbird," which is where I went to school, and you guys recorded.
And I
And
think that came per your suggestion to go down there.
okay, yeah. So you called me, and I hated it. I couldn't go because I had a job that was like 6 days a week, and I hated that job. But you guys went, recorded drums and bass, and then you started coming.
And a lot of guitar and vocals too.
Okay, yeah, a lot of guitar, and then yeah, you got to use some insane guitar amps and stuff. Like, was it a Dumble? Was that what it
Double modded, some sort of Fender Tweed amp is what I used. Alex used primarily a matchless amp. I don't know the model. And then I also used I don't remember what the other Fender amp was that I used, but it was big and loud.
Yeah, in a studio in Studio D, which has like a huge API console, and you
I
guys,
think that's the biggest.
yeah, I think it is the biggest API console in the world. So that was cool. But you called me and asked what should we do, and we talked about focusing on drums and bass, and you got some of the guitar stuff, and then you came back and you guys recorded in this room before it
Mhm.
was renovated.
Yeah.
That's where we did a lot of the overdubs and the vocals. And then I think too, you were seeing some of the stuff I did with my own personal music. Like we'd go to Chipotle and I'd show you stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think you started doing your own music in Logic and stuff more. I don't, or maybe you were already doing it, but yeah.
Yeah. I probably built up a collection of just noodles and hooks on guitar that would then add a little, I don't know, drum beat over, nothing crazy. And then uh yeah, just kind of building songs, mostly for myself, but things that didn't fit the band sound. Again, at this point, starting in GarageBand, really having no idea what the heck I was doing with their little like stock plugin compressor and not having any clue what attack or release meant or the
Yeah.
ratio, and but finding what I thought sounded good, and yeah, anyway, so started
Yeah.
kind of working on my own music to start.
Well, and so we got pretty much all the tracking done. You guys did like 14 songs in 2 days at Blackbird, and I mean they're only like 5 or 6 hour days, the full drum tracking days, I think, right? Like they're maybe 10 hours is
I
the
don't I don't recall. I feel like I might remember arriving at around 11 a.m. and
yeah,
then leaving around like 5. So yeah, that
yeah.
sounds right. And we went down with the plan to do only 5 new songs,
Wow.
thinking that that would take a couple of days. And then the first day we picked our amps out. We got set up in Studio D. Drum kit was all selected and did sound checks and everything. Got levels dialed in, and then from there. Um, did 1 or 2 takes of those 5 songs in, I don't know, just a couple of hours on day one, and then the engineer, the instructor for that uh, class that was recording us
Yeah.
asked, "What do you guys want to do next?" And so we didn't really plan on doing more than that, but we can run some old songs we've done.
Yeah.
So why not? So we did that.
That's pretty cool. And so you guys did that. You came back here, you recorded guitars here, you recorded vocals. Eventually, you were starting to get pretty good at recording on your own. You did the percussion with at home with John Love at your studio. And then when you guys moved to the cabin, like, well, so I don't know, when did you guys go to the cabin? What year was that?
We were living in Baltimore and Baltimore City, and then bought the cabin in January 2021, and then didn't really fully move out here until July or August of 2021. But it wasn't until 20 February or March of 2022 that we actually opened up the doors to the public for recording as a proper business.
So that was another call I got where you were like, "Hey, we're thinking about buying a property and putting a studio there. Can you kind of help, like
Yeah.
help me get set up and everything?" And we did, like you were talking about, we did that weekend, or well, it was supposed to be a week of recording stuff, and it went really. I think it was cool. Like obviously the space is great for recording. Um, and then I'm trying to think about from there. I mean, so you kind of had some ideas about recording drums, but basically I showed you the technique I used and we did that like twice. And then you had your first real session in 2022. How'd you guys find the cabin?
Good question. I think during 2020 and kind of, I don't know, COVID lockdown era, my wife's kind of longtime dream of having a more like secluded property for opening some sort of event style venue. I think weddings were initially the idea, turned into more of a reality as she was like, searching on Zillow, the idea of the Shenandoah National Park and the
Yeah.
Blue Ridge Mountain uh, area was kind of the jumping off point, and then we saw that there was this cabin up on a hill that secluded and had been sitting on online for a bit, and visited it a couple of times and pulled the trigger, not really knowing what we were getting into,
Yeah.
and Yeah, I think again, even when our band came out here, we weren't just to record some demos with you. We weren't even like thinking about the cabin being a studio space for music other
Yeah.
than those couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I don't know. It's a beautiful space. It's kind of a dream space, really. I'll show pictures at some point, but it's like on top of a mountain and it's beautiful there. And so that's cool. So fast forward to you guys bought the cabin, you moved, we did kind of a practice session, and then in 2022 you started recording bands and like folk artists and all whatever projects you can get your hands on, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right. We started, I mean, ironically, the first project was one of our biggest, as far as was a band that wanted to do, I think a minimum of 11 songs for an album.
Yeah.
Um, it's a three-piece rock band that it's called The Flops, and it was actually an artist that I'd seen on social media, just posting it, and I thought they had a really cool sound, and I reached out to them and asked like if they wanted to record anything, and they had a sound that was somewhat similar to my own with my band, and I
Yeah.
thought it'd be neat to kind of work alongside a band that had a similar vision and sound, um, and also had no idea what I was getting myself into as far as the length of a big project that has 11 songs on it.
Yeah. Well, it took us, I mean, like COVID
I think we
happened.
froze there.
What? Oh, it froze the, can you hear me still? Am I back yet? Hello, hello. Am I back? Weird. Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Okay. Yeah. The connection cut out. So, um, so yeah, so you did the flops project and man, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to think back.
I
So
think you're saying in 2022, kind of what was the first project or
yeah, so you had the flops and then you guys recorded like 10 or 11 songs
did
almost
11 songs.
live, basically.
Yep, and they picked five of those 11 to kind of do an EP, and kind of went and picked those five to then do overdubs for. We really overdubbed everything: bass,
Yeah.
guitar, added some lead parts as they were a three piece. So we had a rhythm section and then also had a lead section on a couple of the songs, and then went back over and did vocals, and then added some background vocals and harmonies, and then also had a cello player come in, and then
Yeah.
what do you, I guess a
Well,
three
and
piece
you
vocalist
had
group.
to you had to mix too, or I mean, so I helped you with miking those drums up. That was one of the sessions where we
Hmm.
kind of, you got a crash course in how I mic drums.
Hmm.
And then from there, you had to try to mix that band without really ever mixing real drum, like without doing mixings where it's a full drum kit and all that stuff. So
Hmm.
I think this is a good place to talk about, like, I don't know, the stuff. What did you learn during that process? Because, you went from beginner to now where you are, but like, I don't know, what did you learn from that? What was some of the lessons you took away from your first time trying to mix a real band?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is to remain self-aware and humble, and I think that to be transparent, but also not self-deprecating at the same
Mm,
time, in what you do know and what your abilities are, and to be transparent with the client or the band or the artist you're working with about what can be done.
yeah,
I think that's super important. I tried stressing to them that I was new to this and new to the space, and that they were essentially going to be our guinea pig with uh, first band tracking and mixing out of the cabin.
yeah,
um, I think that between reaching out to you regularly and just either asking for very specific advice or even sometimes more vaguely just saying like, so I did this, what are your thoughts on this, and just kind
yeah,
of getting feedback in that regard. It's so important to have kind of a mentor, or a teacher or what have you in this field. I think a lot of times people talk about how it can be difficult being isolated, working independently, and not having somebody else there to just check your work essentially,
yeah,
um, or provide feedback about, I mean, even stuff as far as like EQing a track or what have you. That goes a long way. To get another set of ears and another brain on a project. What else? I also feel like I learned to kind of trust your gut on things and trust your ears. And if you, I think, yeah, if you go down a rabbit hole, I
Yeah.
think knowing like what a good stopping point is so important to
Yeah.
have like I guess the word would be like a boundary of how far is too far
Yeah.
with spending time doing an overdub on X, Y, or Z.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, what else? What else? What else?
Well, I guess like is there stuff you did mixing the first time that you don't do now? Like things like what lessons did you take away where you're like, "Oh, I don't need to do that ever again," or is there anything like that?
Honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is organization, and even like in the project and in the DAW, just getting everything well organized. And then I know you've kind of at one point you laid out for me early on in that mixing process, kind of what your specifically what your drum mixing, what your multi-track drum mixing
Yeah.
process is, and I still kind of will refer back to that often just to make sure that I'm not getting off track.
Mm.
Um, but organization, I feel like is so important.
Yeah.
And even like in Logic, it's like the track stack idea, or it's really just a drum bus that I'm then using and just making sure that I've got a template set up that I can then kind of import tracks into and then go ahead
Yeah.
and just yeah, the workflow I think is one of the biggest things. Whereas back then I feel like I was just shooting from the hip a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, Logic does weird stuff with file management. Like at least I remember we were running into stuff. I don't know how you've kind of fixed that where it was like it was going to the cloud or something. You remember that stuff where it was
yeah, that was a huge ordeal. I totally forgot about that. So you just said it. Yep, yep. Yeah, the folder, the default folder that's being saved to at one point, tracks were being saved to the iCloud rather than to my hard drive on the computer or on an
yeah.
external hard drive. So I don't know. I feel like so much of this is trial and error, and like
Yeah.
it's inevitable that there will be a lot of error. And until you kind
Yeah.
of get a good workflow down, you don't know what those errors will be until you've experienced them, unfortunately.
Yeah. What I think is cool, like I started doing recording in 2010, like seriously, like recording other bands, and I kind of had some ideas of how to record a drum set, but I ended up going all the way to Nashville for a year, leaving Virginia. I had a part-time studio business out of my parents' basement, and it was pretty good. I had some regular clients, left that, went to Nashville just so I could use all the gear and learn all the crap and, try to like see what I was missing because you never really feel like you know everything. You always feel like, am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? You kind of talked about that when you first got in to doing it. But essentially, everything well, the way that I record drums, which it took me, I don't know, uh, if it was 2022, that would have been 12 years later. I basically gave you gave you how I record drums, and it took me 12 years to get there, and I did that twice. And now I remember some of the sessions like with the Barons, who they were, I think, Beat My Mix one of their tracks. And those drums weren't recorded perfectly, and I was there for that, and we were using like some Neve preamps and some other stuff that we weren't quite familiar with or used to. It wasn't the normal workflow. But essentially, though, my long-winded point is that you learned how to record drums the way I do it to where I hear the recordings you do, and it's just like, okay, CJ does not need my help. He's got it. And it's just like you still
I don't like hearing that. That's a scary thought.
well, you don't need my help. I mean, like when I hear the drums you've recorded, they sound good. So it's like, especially what's the band? Then was it something they had a song called Gnome or something like that?
Films on song out of Charlottesville.
Yeah, they're very tight, and I remember hearing their drum sound, and it's just like you've got it. Like it doesn't. You're crushing it. So, I mean, I think having a mentor is important, and I think it's cool that what took me years and moving my wife to Nashville against her will and then coming back, like you got to learn that pretty quickly. And now, I mean, you're doing recording where it's like, I don't know, it's really it's cool. And it's like I've done consulting and some kind of coaching for a number of people, but you're you're one of my favorite stories, you know, and I mean, you just went nuts, you know, you quit your job and you bought a cabin in Stanton, Virginia, and
Literally went nuts. If you,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you went nuts. But so I don't know. I think your story is really cool. So let's see.
Well, I think one thing too is that I through your assistance and oversight and guidance, I don't know how to put this best. I just like everybody else with I think the envy of high price point gear and knobs and buttons and
Yeah,
meters and all that stuff's cool, but and it'd be a different story if I probably had it sitting next to me. But I do try to just use what I've got
yeah,
and make the bare minimum kind of work. I don't I think that, and you and I have talked about this so often, but the song is the most important thing. And I think that
yeah,
the performance and then the performer, the artist or performer's comfortability and kind of like their feeling in the moment of capturing the recording
yeah,
um, comes first. And then, yeah, I think that there's other between your channel and your videos, and then also some of the other ones. What is it? Like the produce like a pro series. Like
yeah,
there's just there's a pragmatism that I feel like that corporations and gear companies don't want you to keep in mind that
yeah.
you can use 57s and you can use Focusrite and still get good recordings.
Yeah, I mean the technology has gotten to the point where you can buy something very cheap and make a recording that 20 years ago would have been like stated or 30 years ago would have been like, wow, how are you doing that at home
Hmm.
without some kind of crazy console or something? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I think I definitely try to stress that the gear is like that you can make great recordings pretty much with what you have. Even a
Yeah.
Focusrite 2i2 and a condenser mic, people are making, you know, stream stuff that gets millions of streams on Spotify just doing that. You know, you don't
Yeah.
have to and I so for your setup, you have an 18 now you have two 18i20s and chained together, right?
Yeah. It's nothing crazy. I mean, it's me 5 years ago would say, what the hell am I looking at?
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the bulk of our phone calls for a while is what the hell's the audio interface? Um,
Yeah. A lot of people
and
want to a lot of people want to buy consoles first. Like and especially there's older dudes like I had a you know, whenever I start talking to people about buying gear and they're like in their 50s or above, they're like, "Well, I want to get a console." And I'm like, "Don't do that. Like it's
yeah,
just more complicated than you need."
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I mean, how many mics? It's like maybe somewhere between 10 to 12 or 13 mics on a drum set.
I think I'm using, yeah, somewhere between 10 and 12. I think again, this is per your guidance and oversight, but I'm usually going with kind of my standard setup right now is a 52A by Shure on the kick in.
Yeah.
Um, what is that? The Yamaha sub kick on
Yeah.
the kick out. If I can afford it, as far as if I've got an empty channel, I might throw another mic on a kick out.
Yeah.
Um, Condenser mic typically of some sort. I'm using snare top and bottoms. I've got usually 57 on each of those.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the toms based on again based on what's available. Lately, I've done SM7, actually the one I'm using right here
Yeah.
on the rack tom, and then a Sennheiser. What is that? Is it an MD 421 or an M 421? I can't recall the
Oh, you
numbers.
got the
Or
421. I forgot about that. That's
yeah,
great, Mike. So you've been enjoying that one?
yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's also a great kick in mic.
Right. Yeah, I remember you
Yeah.
saying that. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great kick in mic as well.
And then also for overdubs for guitars and bass, right? Put
Yeah.
it on a
Oh,
speaker.
yeah. Yeah, you can do a 57 with that and put it on a guitar cabinet,
Hmm.
stereo mic it. What was the other thing? Oh, and your overheads. I mean, you bought these like AKG pencil condensers they're like, are they $100 each?
They're extremely affordable. Yeah, I
They're
want to say
great.
that.
That's good
Yeah,
though. Like
yeah.
they sound good. That you know, I think too during Black Friday last year, I almost bought them, but they were like
I
I
want to
think
say
they were like
$60.
$60. You
Why
could
not?
yeah, those are great overheads and they're good enough. They are
I've
good
used them on
enough.
vocals. I've used them on acoustic guitar. I've used them
Uh,
on overheads for drums. At one point, I think we put them on a snare next to the 57 and got a really
yeah.
cool blended sound out of that.
That was
Uh,
on the Barons.
I
They
believe you're right.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
then
those
I think yeah. And then what else have we done? Before doing the SM7 and the 421 on the toms, I just threw 57s on it and
Yeah.
really didn't have any complaints. I mean, I think the 57 anywhere seems to be like the golden standard. And then yeah,
Can you
but
explain
then what else?
who Tony Two Fingers is to the people
I
watching?
can't. No,
You can't explain
no.
Tony Two Fingers?
I
Did you
think
know
there's
Tony
some
Two Fingers?
can't talk about that.
Can't talk about
Yeah,
it. It
no,
sounds so dirty, but
yeah,
basically it's just two fingers between the microphone and the drum, or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
three. But the like, so for the top and bottom snare, you make sure the microphone's two fingers away from the drum, or
Yep,
three.
yep.
And I do that with the toms. I do that with top and bottom snare. That's pretty much it. But one time,
Then playing around with the angle, right?
yeah, you can play with the angle. And another thing Ryan Hewitt taught me, or it's like you can hit a drum and feel where the air is coming off the drum and put the mic there, because we're just trying to capture air basically. So that was cool. But yeah, it was like, well, how do you measure out the toms? It's like Tony Two Fingers, and that's a joke that CJ and I've had for a long time. But yeah,
You probably had to be there.
huh?
You probably had to be there.
I think they'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous. Um, so we've got mixes of UFO, which is one of the Milestones songs. So I think I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to kind of get your feedback.
Should I provide feedback in real time as I'm listening, or wait till the
Yeah,
end?
I mean, just you can shout out. They've already heard my thoughts. I will be commenting. I'm trying to think. There's one dude. I think I'll save the mix towards a little bit later. I mean, honestly, I think his mix was just as good as mine. Um,
Is that a Freudian slip?
what did I say?
His meat was just as good as mine.
I didn't say that. That's good. You're getting more comfortable. All right, Antonio. So we'll check out his mix, and it's just commenting on the balance. I know
Yeah,
you've
sure.
watched
Yep,
some of
yep,
the
yep, yep.
podcast, just shout out whatever you think. Mix wise. I feel like the bass is too loud.
Tried to tell me, oh, that you ain't no good. Well, don't you never come around to this neck of the woods. She plays her game, and she tugs at her dress.
I feel like snare should come up. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, or are you just calculating what you're thinking?
Still thinking, but yeah, I think the vocal EQ could maybe be a little bit brought down with like the upper mids and the highs. I think that I like the idea of some of those delay tails on vocals, but maybe they could be tightened up a bit.
Maybe like down, or do you think like feedback?
I think it's more so like the delay time and the feedback could maybe be a little like, or
Okay.
like, yeah, it could be brought back a bit. For this song,
Yeah.
Alex, the other guitar player and singer, is the primary songwriter for the song.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I feel like I had a pretty heavy hand in the mix of like providing notes and feedback and directions and everything
Yeah.
for the song. It's definitely a dance tune.
Yeah.
With that said, I think that the kick and the bass are a major driving force. So I think that
Yeah.
this mix is on a good direction with keeping those pretty front and center.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could probably be pulled back and balance a bit more as far as level and volume goes.
For bass and snare,
I'd say bass and kick could be
or
pulled
bass
back
and
just
kick.
a
That's what I
smidgen.
mean.
Now I know that halfway through the song kind of changes and with
All right.
the guitar solo and drum solo. So kind of
Let's
curious
check
how
that.
sits.
Yeah. Well,
She likes to party.
I feel like the bass is definitely too loud, and I feel like bottom snare or there needs to be more top snare.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And then the guitars, I think the bass is just kind of eating it a little bit. Guitars need to be up.
And so she stands beside me. She thought that you should know.
Toms aren't bad. But yeah, I think the bass is eating it.
out of the chamber on the drums. So I think it's just drum balance and balance issues in general, basically. Like it's not terrible, but the bass is a little too loud. Toms need to come up. The top snare drum needs to come up. And then the chambers, I think, were maybe a little loud. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I can hear the chamber coming down. And now, on these mixes are plugins fair game, or is this all like pretty dry
You're
as far as
saying on my end or their end?
on the mixers end? Could there
They
be
have
other stuff added?
this is, I mean, they've fully mixed these songs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. These are, I'm sure they're doing plugins galore. I mean, I went over Andre's video, which I think I'll put up before this one, where he went over that dude. He had a really cool chain,
Yeah.
for
Cool.
drums, and he had a template that he was mixing out of.
Yeah.
Where he had like 5 parallel compression buses for vocals, where they all had like one had an 1176, another one had a Fairchild. Like there was different compressors where he was like blending them in. I don't know. It was really cool. That's a good video. That'll be a fun video to watch. So here's Giuseppe's mix.
Guitars sound nice right out of the gate.
Yeah. Pretty good so far. There's good.
I like that tight bass sound.
Yeah.
But the vocals could be kind of rounded out, maybe a little bit more warm.
Like you mean like drive maybe? Or
Something, maybe a bit of saturation. I feel like that's maybe too crisp, or
Okay.
that's just for my ears. Everything I'm saying obviously is subjective, and there's no
Yeah.
right or wrong. But
Totally. Yeah.
and I'm also biased because I'm so used to your mix for the song at this point.
Yeah, it's probably tough, but I think Andre's is it's right there. So this is pretty good too. I could hear a little bit more saturation on the vocal. I want a little bit more snare, and maybe the vocal down just a hair, but I don't know. Toms need to come up. I think that was one of the things I said originally. It's not present enough.
Keep on moving as the music grows, it'll be alright. She likes to party.
Pretty good drum mix with the bass.
Would if I could.
The guitars are in a good spot.
Get away, her love is too good. Burning through the atmosphere like a UFO. So she stands beside me, thought that you should know.
Maybe hi-hat level down just a smidgen.
Okay. I don't know if there's a hi-hat mic. I can't
I
remember.
thought there was.
Yeah. Guitars are really clear. This is where those toms got to be bigger and louder. They need to be in line with the snare drum, at least.
What would you do
So I think the level's too low. I would turn
for
up
the toms though?
Yeah,
You
the
said-
toms for the toms, the level's too low, and then I would EQ probably. I would be boosting low end somewhere between 50 and 100, and then maybe even a little bit of top. I'd also edit out the sound, like the bleed of cymbals and all that stuff, so it doesn't
Yeah.
get too harsh. But those toms have to be huge. I'll just play them. They're not terrible. Maybe like 2 or 3 dB or something. Boost it.
Guitars sound really nice.
Yeah, it's a good guitar mix. Yeah, it's not a bad mix. I mean, think overall the balance was really good. Maybe a little vocal saturation, maybe a little tweak to tom volume for sure, and some EQ.
I feel like maybe at the very, I don't know if I only heard a double on the vocals. I think for the lyric that's like burning through the atmosphere, just like a UFO,
Yeah.
that line. But if there was like maybe a way to tighten those up together, maybe what is that like having like a compressor on like a vocal bus or something like that.
Okay. Huh. Was it
I
like,
don't
did
know.
it just sound doubled or something?
It,
Or like,
I think so. Yeah, I think it sounded like just a little obvious that there was a second vocal that was
yeah,
separate from the lead
I,
vocal
s-
there.
I struggle with that. And what I've learned to do is align my vocals, which
Mhm.
this song, I didn't do that.
Mhm.
But that's a lot of work too,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
depending on how many vocals you have. But I struggle with getting the doubles low. Like to me, it's like they shouldn't be audible, right?
Yeah.
They should just be kind of filling in. So,
Mhm.
but that's an art for sure. So this is Marcus's mix. It was really compressed. That's what the feedback was, over compressed. I kind of like the kick and snare.
She tried to tell me, oh, that she ain't no good.
A little harsh in the top end.
Well, don't you never come
Yeah, I think between hi-hats,
of the woods.
vocals,
Yeah.
high end's pretty aggressive.
Yeah. Well, the other problem is that when you are, it might be that there's a hi-hat mic. I don't think it's being compressed, but what happens is that when you over compress the overheads or the room mics, like everyone wants to crush the room mics, and that's where things really get harsh, is like when you start compressing things that have cymbals in them, or if you compress toms and there's cymbal bleed in there,
Yeah. Yep.
that can, like, I've had that where it's like, this is destroying my mix because I've compressed overheads.
Would you do like an overhead bus and then have like a smashed like kind of setting for that?
So for me, if I ever do any compression to the overheads, it's very light. It's
Yeah.
not like I'm crushing the hell out of it. But what I do is I mostly just EQ, maybe a little bit of like, I don't know, you could do tape saturation or something, but I don't know. Like I usually it's just EQ and volume for overheads. The room mics, I'll EQ and compress and kind of blend them in lightly. But the main part of compression for me is, I mean, I have my drum mix and then I do a parallel compression where I'll send kick, snare, and toms to that.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to, and then if I do send the overheads to the parallel compress the crush bus, it's very light. I mean,
Gotcha.
just to get a little taste of the cymbals in there.
Mhm.
But when it just sounds like everything's compressed, or you have a drum bus, and I do compress the drum bus. I'll say that, but I'm not crushing the snot out of it. I do that on a parallel bus and
So
blend.
far, I think I hear kind of the same thing as the last mix where the vocal doubles just sound so separate from each other.
Yeah. Well, and this song, I don't have the session open, but it's like it's probably has 70 tracks, maybe 50 to 70, somewhere in there. And I mean, you've probably had to deal with this too, mixing these full bands where it's like when you get up into the 50 track count, it becomes hard to manage some of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and that goes back to my first point of how important organization is, and just your templates or whatever, like in Logic, like the idea of track stacks, and then just managing all that has been so crucial.
Yeah, yeah. When you're with how many tracks, yeah, it can get crazy.
In between her red lips.
I kind of like the vocal sound though, but it's got a lot of saturation. Hi-hat is a little aggressive, but I think it's just the compression stuff.
You don't gotta worry, 'cause we dance tonight.
And I also hear something rattling. I don't know. So
Yeah, so do I. I thought that was maybe your computer or something.
nope. That's in the track. But anyway, I think that we'll move to Vaclav's mix. Do you have any final thoughts on that one, or should we move on?
But we can move on.
All right, here's Vaclav. I turned it up a little bit.
Sounds good right off the bat. I
Yeah.
like that reverb's the guitar reverb's got a nice tail on it.
I want to hear it again.
Feels like it was all done in the same room.
Okay. I didn't even know. I mean, now I can't not notice it, but that's good. That's cool.
You know she tried to tell me
Sounds like a
It's
slap
interesting.
back.
that you ain't
Yeah, interesting vocal.
Yeah.
Well, don't you never come around to this neck of the woods.
All right. So if I sent you this and you were going to do mix corrections, would you leave that alone, or would you say anything about it? The vocal effect.
I think if we're talking kind of about the slapback delay sound on it, I think
Yeah.
that there's two routes I'd want to consider going. One would be having just that slapback on the end of the phrases,
Okay.
or just dial it back a little bit so it's not as
Not as present.
tense. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't hate it. I don't
No,
dislike it.
it's not bad. I think it just, you would probably, in my mind, I think I would get an email saying, hey, turn that down a little bit. Like,
Before you make Tony Two Fingers come.
yeah, don't make Tony Two Fingers come out. That slapback, yo.
She plays her game.
Yeah, it's just a little bit. It needs to come down a little bit.
But drums sound pretty good. Guitar sounds nice.
Yeah. The only thing, one thing I'll say with the vocal effects stuff, or what I've had to learn to do, and you just have to tweak the shit all the time, number one, but I'll make my effects and then I'll bring them up to the point where I hear them and then I'll bring them down a little bit. Like that's one of the techniques that I've learned where it's like, it depends on the song. Like if it's, I don't know. For this song, I think it's cool to have that. If it was just a little bit lower, I think it'd be really good.
She plays her game. And she tugs at a dress.
Sounds good though. The bass is good.
Between her red lips, press a cigarette.
I like the drum balance so far.
Burn through the
And the guitars.
like you asked for. So she stands beside me. She wanted you to know.
You definitely hear everything the bass is doing. Yeah. Telephone.
Drums sound nice right there.
Yeah.
She likes to party.
That's cool. That it's a telephone effect. I think what I would have done is, well, there again, I think the delays are too much, but I would have had a clean vocal and the telephone effect, but have the clean vocal kind of underneath, like blend the two, not just a telephone. But I don't know. What do you think? Did you hear the telephone effect?
I heard it. Yeah. I mean, everything, those types of parts and effects are all to taste and based on kind of either one, what the artist or the client kind of wants, or two, just kind of like, I always like to experiment and throw some, if I think a song calls for it, I'll sometimes even provide a mix that says like, with effects on
Yeah.
vocals or without, just to have like an option and put ideas in people's heads. And if somebody hates it, it's not a bad thing just to figure that out, because you kind of get feedback or information that way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't my favorite thing to taste. I mean, I could see that being blended further like back into that mix and having a kind of a cool sound, like the type of effect that where you think you hear it, but you have to kind of
Yeah.
ask like, do I hear something? Rather than like so obvious. Goes a long way sometimes too. And then yeah, otherwise I thought everything so far sounds pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix. I mean, I like that it does make a difference between the first half of the second verse and the second half. Like
Yeah,
in there. And I think it's cool too. Like, I don't know, we've had moments like City of Soul. Or maybe it's Get Out, where you did an ooh thing, like an ooh, and we just panned the shit out of it and like made it this like almost guitar tremolo effect.
Yeah.
But that was also something, and I mean, obviously they can't do that because they're not in the room with you guys, with the band, but
Yeah, right.
it's like that was something me and you came up with on the spot. And
Yeah, well, and that's like where I think the artistry and the creativity in mixing, I guess even like overseeing like the production of a song is cool when you've got that leeway or flexibility or freedom to do some of that stuff. But also know that there are a lot of times, I feel like more often than not, those things get poo-pooed.
Yeah. Well, and like with us, there was times too where we would do something like that. And for me, it's like, okay, we might go down this rabbit hole for 5 or 10 minutes, but it shouldn't be any longer than that. you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
But I don't know. Those things are fun. To me, it's fun to kind of throw people a loop and
Yep.
throw something in that is different.
Burning through the atmosphere like a UFO.
I think the guitars and the balance is really good.
Yep.
Thought that you should know.
The bass is nice and low, but you can hear the articulation. Just want to hear John Love's drum filled. I feel like the toms could come up a little bit. I mean, that's pretty good though. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Good mix. I wonder how many of these mixes were being. I wonder how many of these mixes used your mix as a reference by chance. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure they
Consider-
did. I left it in and I gave them the BPM. All right,
Gotcha.
I put that in the folder. Say, here's a reference. This is what you're beating. And yeah, the only thing I would say is at the end of that song, and I have no idea. Like maybe we'll listen to some of my mix at some point here, but it just like I feel like that last like coming back into that last jam out section it needs to uh-oh. I hear Jenna, or I hear somebody.
Might be my time. We got one more mix, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got this one and we've got the guy that won. But we'll just kind of go through this one quickly.
Sure.
Pretty solid.
You know she tried to tell me, oh, that you ain't no good.
But so far, it's lacking some of the low end.
I agree. Yeah, bass is
Come around this
Even like the EQ of the guitars and vocals, it seems like it's like pretty upper mid and high heavy.
probably cut off too much on the high pass filter, like they're cutting out lows on everything. This is
Which isn't a bad thing to do sometimes.
Well, you can't default just cut off everything. I mean, I don't know, like and if you're gonna do high pass filtering a lot, you should the way I do it is I will bring like here, it's on the whole mix, but I'll do it till I hear it like
Don't you never
it's looping, thank you.
never come around this neck of the woods.
Like I do it, so that's too much, right? But you basically do it until you hear it and then you bring it back. If you're going to do any of that, but you don't always have to, like, I think you can low cut bass a little bit, low cut kick drum, and obviously guitars, vocals, all that stuff, but you got to be careful with it. So yeah, I think that's what's happening there. He cut off too much low. I don't think the balance is bad.
No. Yeah, balance sounds nice.
Yeah. It is missing the lows a little bit. And the guitars are a little too loud.
Which is classic Milestones.
Yeah, you guys would love that. Your guitar band.
I don't know if we love it, but it's just the way that things work out.
Feels like the toms need to come up.
Yep. And it's pretty heavy on the chamber tracks.
I don't hate it, but I think I mean, like, it is heavy on the chamber, but I think the close mics, you got to have them in your face for this part.
Yeah.
just a little, they're just too low. I mean, it sounds good. Yeah, I think we diagnosed that one pretty good. Should we hear Andre's mix? This is the dude that won.
Did we not listen to that one?
We haven't listened to it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, sure.
Saved it for last just because it was
Okay.
winner.
You know she tried to tell me, oh, that she ain't no good. Well, don't you never come around.
Kind of the same thing with double vocals.
Are the vocals that you doubled?
Plays her game.
Yeah, like you said, that's a art to be able to get that to stay tight.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with it. I feel like it's the same thing as the reverbs. Like if you can hear it and you really hear it, there's too much.
Yeah,
Same thing with the doubles. Like just you got to bring them out till like you don't want to hear the doubles. You don't want to know that it's doubled.
right.
And I mean, yeah, and they all have to be aligned and all that stuff. I don't know. Doubles are tough.
You know she tried to tell me,
Well, here's his verse. Here's mine.
like you asked for.
Is louder. Hold on. I don't want it just to be louder.
In between her red lips, Prince cigarette. She burned it through
Louder.
like you asked for. Stands beside me, she wanted you
I
to.
feel like he has more top in it. Mine is a little bit.
Don't gotta worry.
It's just not as bright, and I like it.
Just keep on moving as the music grows. It'll be
I do hear the double and the reverb a little too much.
She likes to party. And I would if I could.
I love his bass and the drum.
You know I got to get away. Her love is too good.
We can probably pull the hi-hat down a bit too.
Like you asked for.
I can hear that maybe a little bit.
Stands beside me.
Fine.
But you should know.
Pretty good. Toms. That's him. I mean, I think it's close. Might have more low end.
Do you remember where you panned?
What's that?
Do you remember where you panned your toms and overheads for this song?
I always pan my overheads usually at like 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and the toms are usually between 10 and 2. And then on my drum bus, sometimes I will, instead of having the drum bus pan hard right, hard left, I'll go either 3 o'clock or 10. Like I'll bring it in even more because I want the
Mhm.
drums to be kind of like here, and then like the guitars will be on the sides and everything. I usually pan my guitars hard right and hard left. Like for
Mhm.
your band, you guys have 2 guitar players, so one of you's on the right, one of you's on the left, just like
Yep.
on stage.
Yeah,
And then the solos are in the middle.
gotcha.
Doubles or background vocals, those can be panned like stereo or hard right, hard, just somewhere in the stereo field.
Yeah,
But I kind of
cool.
adjust that stuff just as I go. But
Yeah,
I thought that was a really good mix. When
yeah,
I
yeah,
first heard it, and out of all the mixes that people submitted, I was like, I didn't even know what to say at first. I just thought this is a good mix. I don't even know
yeah,
what to do with it. But
yeah.
um, maybe the effects were a little heavy on the vocals and the doubles, maybe a little much.
Cool. No, all this sounded good. And again, kind of, yeah, the service and experience and guidance and mentorship that you're providing through this channel is really awesome and unique and valuable. So this is a pretty cool experience to be able to see multiple mixes from multiple people, and I'm sure from different parts of the world.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Kind of,
they're from all. I mean, I think the guy's mix that we just listened to, Andre, he's from Moldania or no, Romania. I don't know, something like he's all over the world. So I mean,
yeah,
people everywhere. So it's really cool. But yeah, and thanks for letting us use the music. And the cabin is cool. I don't know.
yeah.
There's so
We'll
much.
also do another follow-up, something about the cabin maybe, and kind of maybe a video of like drum mic setup or something, or maybe even
One,
like a
we're talking about hopefully one day doing some more milestone stuff. So
yep,
maybe when we
not
might,
too far off.
what's that?
Not too far off schedule wise. I think that we're behind the scenes. We're trying to get that all coordinated right now, and got some cool demos that we're working on.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. I'm excited about that. So I think whenever that happens, maybe we'll video kind of the drum setup. And I mean, I honestly, I want to do vlog stuff. I don't know if anyone really cares about vlogs, or at least my vlog, but I'd kind of like to vlog that whole
Cool.
weekend. I think that'd be fun. But all right, man. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you for doing this and everything. And
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
we'll have you back on again soon, and maybe we'll just do something like this where we just talk about audio questions, and I don't know, we'll
Yeah.
come up with some topics.
Would you ever think about getting all the people that did these mixes all in one video chat, or would that ever be possible, or
Um,
no?
well, what we could do is live stream,
Yeah,
and I could
yeah.
send out an email to the list and be like, "Hey, CJ and I are going to be live streaming a Zoom call, and you
I
can
see.
ask question. I mean, we'll just have the questions right there, and
Yeah,
we'll
just let me know.
topics. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. I mean, it's definitely good to get you on because you're growing in your mixing stuff and what you're doing with recording, and you're doing this all the like, this is what you do at this point. So,
Well, I appreciate it.
all right,
Yeah,
man.
everything up to this point. So,
Cool. All right, CJ. I'll see you,
all right,
man. Thank you guys
all
for
right,
watching.
Chris.
All right. See ya.